Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennison.
And I'm Ginelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, please visit tableandwellco.com. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of Season 3 of the Table and Well podcast. We are starting our maturity series again, revisited. And today we're going to be continuing with infant level maturity, infant stage. We talked through in our last podcast just really the basics of it. What are the basic needs and the tasks that are needed to be fully mature in that space? And so today we're going to jump into maybe what does it look like when we have some adults who haven't been fully matured in those spaces. And so, and just really honestly how that affects your life and the life of your community and the people that are around you, your family, your friends. What does that look like? How do we navigate that space? And so we're just going to jump right in and just keep rolling with the infant level of maturity.
Yeah. And so an adult with holes in their maturity at the infant stage will not ask for what they need because they believe if others really cared for them, they would figure out what they needed and meet it.
Never done that. Never.
No, especially not in marriage now.
No, that's not. That never
I know you guys haven't either,
No,
audience.
Yeah. So that's
so
we'll
just keep moving on.
Not for us. No.
And this is really painful.
Yeah.
I think this is one of those, it's happening and you're not realizing it's happening.
Oh, wow.
That you're feeling this frustration or maybe anger or pain because people aren't showing up for you in a way that you're expecting them to show up for you. And now maybe you're resentful because they're not showing up for you in this way.
You can't figure out why they're not.
Right.
It's like you say you love me, you say you care for me, you say you're my friend, then why aren't you showing up for me?
Why aren't you reading my mind?
Right.
And knowing exactly what I need, and why aren't you just doing that?
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to ask you if you really loved me. I
Right.
shouldn't have to ask you for these things.
Wow. Never said that.
No.
Never thought that.
No. And it is painful.
Yeah.
I do want to say that we're kind of being tongue in cheek here because we're reading each other's mail here a little bit, and it's truth for many of us. What I'm not doing, or what I don't want to relay, is that this is not painful and this is not a real pain. So many of us have had life experiences where our parents should have been our parents.
Yeah.
And they should have known what we needed and meet it. And we've had to explain to them what they should be doing. And so there can be some residual pain there when we find ourselves needing to ask for what we need as adults. There's a tinge there that this underbelly pain that's existing because we didn't get this in infancy.
Yeah.
So while this is happening, I just want to acknowledge that there can be a lot of pain that's going alongside of it. And if you notice this happening in your relationship, that's what's at play.
And I want to say this too real quick. I say real quick, but Ginelle, when you were saying that there could be a tinge of pain when you have to ask the adults for what you need. So I want to speak to parents of adult kids. If your kids come to you and they start saying things like that, it's really hard to hear, but know that they are actually growing in their self-awareness and in their own maturity in their space. And it's not a dig at you. It's not, and I'm not going to say not always, but but at the end of the day, they're saying, this is some things that I needed from you that I did not get.
Right.
And part of us being mature parents is, can we actually handle that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is this flip side of, wow, maybe I've been that parent who was not able to identify what my child needed, my infant needed, and show up in a healthy way. And they're now experiencing the pain, and it's created some pain in our relationship. And now maybe they're learning ahead of you what it looks like to identify their needs and ask for them.
Yeah.
And we have to acknowledge that maybe we were the parents creating pain. And that's really hard to do.
Really, really hard.
Yep. So also adults who have holes in their infant maturity will not be able to take care of themselves or others emotionally. This is another big piece, and
it's another pain piece.
It's another pain piece of this is really real. We teach how to do this in collabs. I don't know that there's a lot to elaborate on here because it's just that simple. But it was missing in your infancy. You did not have caregivers who were modeling that for you, and it never really got repaired along the way. And so if you find yourself struggling in this space, that's what's at play.
Yep. Another thing that you might see, or that you most likely will see in adults that have holes in their infant stage of maturity, is they will not be able to appropriately receive important things from others.
Mm-hmm. And this can be just as simple as a compliment.
Yep.
Like when you find yourself struggling to receive a compliment, it's often because you don't believe you're worthy of receiving it, and you'll pass it off in some way. You may also really struggle to receive in relationships. You may find or encounter people who really want to love you or care for you, engage with you, celebrate with you, grieve with you, and you find yourself rejecting it, pushing it away, not trusting it maybe, doubting that it's real. That comes from that gap, because that's likely been your experience.
Right.
In your infancy.
You don't know how to receive it, how to just like take it and hold on to it as truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's strings attached.
Yeah. And maybe because that's maybe true. Like that's the reality. When you are encountering things as an adult and you're like, nope, what's interesting about this maturity model is it's like, oh, that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's why I do that thing.
That's where that came from. Now it makes sense. Yep. Now I understand. And when we see other people struggling in these areas, we can also give them the grace and the understanding of like,
okay.
Like, they just didn't learn how to receive in infancy.
Yeah.
No wonder why every time I try to bless them or compliment them or whatever, they're like, and push and give it back.
Yep.
So I just think this is so interesting. All right, so cannot handle criticism, even if it's valid and constructive. This has to do with receiving. You know, it's nice when we receive compliments. What about constructive criticism?
Yes.
Because all they can see is the negative feedback as a personal attack.
Yes.
As infants, if we're going back to the 0 to 3, our caregivers should have been cheerleading us on.
Yes.
Even when that looked like discipline. Even when that looked like correction.
Yes.
Even when that looked like, we're not going to do it this way. We're going to do it this way. Maybe our agency was overridden and we weren't allowed to explore and figure out for ourselves what worked or what felt good, and we were controlled or told what to do. Yep. We were constantly told that we were bad for figuring out how to be a kid. And I just have a real passion about this because I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't know how to be a kid when I was a kid. Did you know how to be a kid when you were a kid? Like,
really.
Did you get a manual,
there's no manual
or something
on the kid.
like
No.
You just weren't like, you couldn't figure it out the first time. Like you were given a chance to like.
Parents said, "Go be a kid." You're like, what is that? I don't know.
You know, like you didn't wake up and like get handed a manual and you're like, okay, today you're going to have big feelings, 2-year-old. And so this is how you're going to handle those big feelings. You got it?
Yeah, no.
You know,
did not get that manual.
Didn't get that manual? Okay. So when we have parents who aren't giving us the grace to also explore what it is to be a kid and figure out and grow developmentally and make a lot of mistakes along the way. And let's be honest, like when we're not giving ourselves grace to make mistakes along the way, well into our elderhood, we will find that we're unable to receive constructive criticism because everything feels like a judgment. Everything feels like a failure. We begin to feel like failures.
Yeah.
And this is another area where we don't feel like it's safe to receive because of the pain that began long time ago from those that were supposed to be protecting us and criticizing us. Like that sounds like a really funny word,
right?
But
in this context,
assessing what we're doing and are you doing something that's helping you grow, and are you maturing, or is there another approach that you could be taking here that's going to actually help you more? And that's what our caregivers' jobs were to do. And if they didn't have the skill to do that well, then we'll have those encounters where there was an invitation to grow and it was delivered in an unhealthy way. Every time we encounter those invitations to grow because we're not doing something right the first time, we're going to find ourselves unable to receive.
Yeah. Yes, very true. It's interesting because that all bleeds over into identity too, and how you see yourself in those spaces. So
because they're directly tied.
They are directly tied. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We didn't go into that, but that whole process of learning to your attachments, then are they joyful or fearful attachments? Then directly affect your identity of how you see yourself and how you see the world around you.
And your identity is built around what others think of you, especially at this stage. You're just watching someone else's face as an infant. You're watching their response as it pertains to you. So
at least how you think it pertains to you.
Right. That's true too. A lot.
Well, because so what happens is at that stage of life, everything is about you.
Right. That's the only person you're thinking about.
The only person that you know even exists really is yourself. And so your circumstances around you, it all relates back to you. So if your mom is holding you and yelling at your dad, you think it's your fault because it's about you. Because
you are the only thing in your world. Yeah.
You're the only thing in your world. It's a very egocentric world for you in that space, which is all of us.
Right, and totally appropriate.
Totally appropriate.
Unless we don't mature out of it.
Right. But so when you haven't matured in this space, it's partly because, let me back this up. That's why it's so important that our caregivers can be, that are healthy.
Right.
For infants, for us at that stage, because in our mind, in our palatable, moldable mind, it's all about us. Every interaction outside of us is about us, and therefore that shapes my worldview of myself and my worldview of the world.
Yep, and who I am as a person.
Yes,
because I don't have the ability at that stage to separate
the two.
Yeah, that my mother might be in an abusive situation and she's just trying to figure out how to survive here and keep herself safe and keep me safe.
Yep.
And so isn't able to care about how I feel right now. Yeah. She's barely able to care about how she feels. And that's really real about her life. But you're not, like at 2, you don't have a way to assess that. It's just creating a lot of pain and unmet need in you. The fun of podcasting and having technology. We were having some mic issues and we were right in the middle of a great point.
Yes.
But all of that to say that we don't have the ability to separate. And as adults, we have gained that ability to understand, right? Understand that everything isn't about me. Other people have their own stories that they're walking out. And just a reminder to those of you who have young adults, this is coming. Like so 25, your kid is going to wake up and realize that you're an actual human being who has a life story and has had to navigate life. And that has come into play in your parenting. And be able to separate that. If you feel like they think you're not human, that's real. It hasn't come yet. That to say, part of the invitation here is to also recognize that about your own parents, and to recognize that while that was extremely painful for you and is very real, the wounding and the gaps that it has left, that in this infant stage, as personal as it felt, or even as personal as some of your interactions feel today, they're likely not about you.
Right.
They're likely about that person's inability to show up well in that space and their lack of skill.
Very true. So good. Another thing that you might see in that stage would be will often be possessive of relationships, power, or their own personal things or belongings, anything. So it's that kind of mind syndrome. If you guys have ever seen Finding Nemo and you have the seagulls that are flying around in Sydney, it's mine. It's that. That's what is, it's that phase. They become very, very possessive and almost maybe kind of militant about it.
Yeah. It's not cute.
No, not cute at all.
And it's not cute.
No.
And this can look everywhere from an adult's inability to share to an adult's deep hunger for power and control. It's just that there's a lack of ability to know that they're safe and okay and resting, and they feel a need to be in possession of all these other things as a form of control to know that they're okay.
Yeah.
You see 2-year-olds learning this skill and developing this skill. And again, if they're not taught to maturely develop this skill, it will still be at play in our adulthood.
Yeah. I'm not going to go there. We'll,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so the last one on our list here is you may be high functioning.
Yep.
Or you may know an adult who is high functioning in many areas of life.
Yep. Even parents,
your parents,
yep.
you as a parent. But due to emotional immaturity, will find it difficult to have successful and enduring relationships.
Wow.
Because of the instability you had in your relationships at this stage.
Yep.
This is where trust is first learned. This is where you being celebrated as a person who exists is learned. This is where you learn that people are paying attention to your needs and meeting them. And so all of that starts to come into play in adult relationships, which again, remember, should be mutually satisfying.
Yep.
And if I'm an adult who is trying to get you to read my mind and figure out what I need and meet that, and you're an adult trying to get me to read your mind and figure out what that need
it's
is.
not
and
mutually satisfying for anybody.
Well, it doesn't work, does
No,
it? So
it
there's
can't work.
a lot of instability, or maybe one of us is struggling with that, and then you're struggling to regulate your emotions.
Yeah.
Or to show up for emotions.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, well, no wonder why these relationships are so unstable and rocky. And you had mentioned back when we were talking about the community and attachment.
Yes.
And again, we should probably do an attachment podcast.
Yep.
But attachment, we teach about it in collabs, is that all of this is being formulated in this infant stage, and it will directly affect how we engage in all of our relationships. Our attachment style will directly affect how we engage.
Yes.
Because of exactly what we're talking about here.
Right.
Attachment's explained in a different way, but this is exactly what's at play.
And what's happening here, and again, guys, it compounds the being able to. Your identity comes from the anyway. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Go there. I got so many things.
I know. This
might be the problem with coming back to this and having everything else.
I know. It's like we keep looking at the timer like we could talk on this for 5 hours and we only have so much battery power left. Okay. So one thing that you might see in leaders who are struggling with gaps in their infant maturity is they may get upset, and they're just upset, and you feel like it's being left on you to figure out why they're upset. I don't know if any of you have had a boss like that, but it's like they're freaking out and angry, and you're like okay. And what they're doing is they have a need and an expectation that's going unmet, and they're not capable of expressing what that expectation is to you so that you can appropriately meet it.
And possibly they don't even know what it is. They just know something's not right. Something didn't quite look right, act right, feel right, come out right, but they don't know what it is, and it just bothers them, and they just get upset.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, so good. Yeah. So again, like Ginelle said, it goes into then it becomes your responsibility to fix that problem. And if you don't fix it, then that's not good.
Yep. And adults who have gaps in their infant maturity, which again, I just want to say is not everyone else. Likely it's me, and likely it's you, and to a varying degree, obviously. But we may end up showing up to our relationships, and likely are showing up to our relationships needy.
Yeah.
Kind of like we were talking about this, I have these needs and I just expect you to figure them out. Or just feeling a little bit maybe like a victim or like an orphan of, gosh, I just wish somebody would take me in. I wish somebody would love me. I wish somebody would care for me, care about me. If you're feeling that, likely this is where many of your, where you may have a little bit heavier weight of gaps.
Yep, where it comes from.
Yep.
And so if our primary dependency needs are not met in infancy, so you'll spend the rest of our lives trying to get others to take care of you.
Mm-hmm. I was just saying,
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So now you, like Ginelle said, you become this needy adult, and it goes back to it's not my problem. It's not my, it's
everybody else's
job. You need
job.
to figure that out. It's not for me to have to figure that out. You need to take care of that. I don't know how to do that. You need, so it becomes that type of thing where you feel like that someone is, if you're on the outside of it, you're always you're fixing all of their stuff.
Right. If you're the person on the other
outside,
side of the relationship,
right.
with someone who has gaps in this area, you feel like you're always responsible for them and for everything.
Yeah. But it's interesting though, because if you're that person, you just think that's normal. That's just how life works. That's
what you need, right? Like you're still needing that. That's really real in your relationships. Of you still need someone to show up for you in this way in order for you to have an experience that's different. For you to mature past this space. And I don't think we've really said that in the introduction of the podcast, but in order to grow through these, you do need a different experience.
Yes.
In order for you to learn how to receive, you need to have an experience of someone giving and you receiving.
So you actually receive.
Right? Yep. For you to have someone to identify your need and meet it before you express it, like somebody's got to care enough to do that. And like we talked about, gosh, yes, amazing that should come from some of our relationships. It shouldn't come from all of our relationships. That's not like you don't get a do-over in the way as a 40-year-old to show up in a community or in a relationship and you're like, okay, so I'm going to learn this infant skill and for the next year I'm just going to be receiving. Okay. Like you just go ahead and figure out what I need and just give it to me. Like,
no, that's not it.
No, that's not it. That would be great. But what it could look like is you could spend the next 3 months paying attention.
Yeah.
When you're in your day-to-day interactions, in your day-to-day life and saying, gosh, what is it that I need right now?
Yep.
How could I go about meeting that need?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel really agitated. Or man, I feel really down. Or I'm really excited about this. That might look like you're excited about something and you invite other people to celebrate with you or take the risk of inviting people into that space. It could look like a variety of different things, but the shift can happen. Our goal here is just to help you begin to build awareness of what might be at play and why it's at play. So just a reminder that the primary task to be completed for infant maturity is learning how to receive and how to live in joy. And then the primary resulting problem as an adult, if it's not completed, is that you have weak or stormy relationships, unstable relationships. When an infant learns to tell you what is wrong or what they need, that marks the transition of that next stage in learning how to take care of themselves. So, and you will see as you're growing through maturity, you will also notice that marker as you're growing through your infant maturity when you can start to move past and identify what you need and learn how to ask for it.
And that's actually really cool to see when we've walked with people through our labs in different spaces and they're like, I was actually able to ask for what I needed. Like I actually knew what I needed and I could ask for it. It's awesome. It's a beautiful thing to see. So what we want to do as well, guys, like we said before in the open here, one of the reasons we're doing this too, we want to just give you guys some practical personal tasks that you can do to begin to grow in your infant stage holes, any gaps that you may have noticed as we've talked through this. And so I'm going to read through a few of these. So again, guys, the hard fact is, the real truth is that as an infant, you are completely dependent on your community to meet your needs. So when you have a gap in your infant maturity, it's impossible to grow through them without others. And we mentioned that earlier. We have to have community. We need people to help us, to give us new experiences that we can grow through.
And just continue to count yourself as part of your own community.
Yes. Yeah. I think one of the things here, as you become more aware of those needs, it could be a really good practice to just ask yourself, is this a need that I can meet myself? Is this a need that maybe I need God to meet that I can't meet myself? So I need him to meet this. Or is this a need that actually somebody in my community or a friend or someone else that I know could actually meet for me, and begin to discern some of those things and address those appropriately in that way. And
identify, and we talk a little bit about this too, but just being real about, I might need this from someone in my community because I'm noticing I don't have the capability myself. Pick well.
Yes.
We're helping raise the maturity of the family of God because many of us are underskilled And I want to encourage you to take the risk, but I also want to encourage you to
be wise,
to take a beat and be wise and notice, can that person actually meet this need for me? Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Really? Am I willing to try? Am I willing, if they can get 20% toward meeting that need or 50% toward meeting that need, is it worth it? Yeah. Will that have given me some sort of different experience? And can I be okay with the 50%?
Yeah.
And that's a real question, not a rhetorical. Well, it is a rhetorical question, but
yourself,
it is a real question.
It's a real question for yourself. Yeah.
Of like, okay, then I'm not going to be disappointed when, again, I have this, like, they should have met it 100%.
Right.
And they didn't.
Yeah. So, also, you need to be willing to admit that you have gaps and work to identify them.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's got to do that. And then you want to seek out others who are willing and mature enough to, basically what Ginelle just said, to learn.
To lean.
I'm trying to read my notes. To lean into the season of intentionally caring for you in this season.
Yep. And just a little backtrack here too. We'll talk about elder maturity. If you are a grown adult, especially if you're a grown adult who has worked through the parent stage or in the midst of a parent stage, don't ask another 40-year-old to be this person for you.
Yep.
They cannot be this person for you. You should be in a mutually satisfying relationship with your peers. What we're looking for is somebody who's further down the road than you, who is further on in life than you. The goal would be that they would be in elder maturity and have this capacity to give back to you. And you may agree on a little dance with somebody who is a peer, but don't lay this responsibility of repairing for you when they're a peer to you.
Yeah.
Be looking for somebody who's a little bit older and in a different stage of life than you.
Yeah. And the last one, be willing to openly receive, whether that be joy from others, even when you're not in the space to receive joy. Maybe you're upset, but being willing to receive it. And then also being able to willing to receive that constructive criticism, as we've talked about. And so really quickly, guys, practical community task that you can do, VCR. We haven't really talked about that. You may or may not know what that is, but it simply means to validate, comfort, and to recover.
And this is you being community for someone else who is learning who is working through their infant gaps.
Yep. Yeah. And so what you want to do in that situation, you would validate their feelings, validate where they're at. Doesn't mean you agree, but you attune to them and you let them know that I see you, I see that this is upsetting for you. You comfort them in that space, and then you help them to recover because that's what they need as an infant from their community to begin to move on into that space.
And that we teach that further as well in our course.
You want to provide safety and companionship during difficulties. And so that's what that is.
Most of these infant gaps come when those that are meant to be caring for us leave us, whether that's physically, mentally, or emotionally. And so, again, to help somebody move through this and grow through this, it's staying with them and providing that companionship and safety.
Yeah. And then you want to watch for their needs and begin to meet their needs without them asking for it. So that's when, someone's sick and you bring them a cup of soup, or you see that they need help with something and they don't ask for it, but you can provide that and you can do that. Beginning to move into that space helps meet those needs that maybe they did not receive as an infant.
Right. And even this is just loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
We have a physical neighbor right now who is going through a very difficult time. And I can't actually help at all. We can't help at all with the actual circumstance. But I've made it a goal to bring her a meal once a week that she can freeze and eat anytime.
Yep.
She didn't ask for that. I don't know if that's actually a full-on need, but I know if I was in her shoes, if I didn't have to think about a meal once a week, that's going to relieve a little bit of where I am. And so it might look like that. It doesn't necessarily look complex. It could look very simple. Somebody, who is grieving.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know that what they really need is for somebody to be with them because they've never experienced that. But maybe you just say, hey, I'm going to pick up some takeout and I'll be there in the next hour. Like, don't worry if the house is trash. Don't worry about any of that. I'm just going to come be with you.
Yep.
Obviously, they have agency and have every right to say, no, thanks, that doesn't feel supportive to me. And maybe they don't believe it would be supportive to them, but they might be like, oh man, she's already on her way. I guess I'll have her here. And then the next thing you know, it ended up being the most meaningful thing. That she didn't know that she needed.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure. And then the last one, and I think this is probably the most important one, delight in others' pure existence and just share joy with them. Just love someone, care for someone, show honor towards someone just because they are here. Mm-hmm. Just because they're in the space, they're breathing, they're a human being. And let them know that they're worthy of love and belonging because they're them.
They exist. And you can do this everywhere. You can do this at the grocery store. You can to do this anywhere. So that's a fun one to pass on, that gift of joy even to complete strangers. Yeah. One other thing I just want to mention is that there's actually maturity indicators that are on our website.
Yes.
That if you want to know more about infant maturity and what are some other pieces that maybe we didn't fully talk about here, like developing trust and what it looks like when we haven't developed trust in infancy, that's all available to you. And again, this is what we walk through in collabs. We take you back to infant maturity and we walk this through again.
Step by step by step.
And if you have a community that you want to bring through a collab, then you have this beautiful built-in community that already exists that can learn and grow together and have language together,
and have new experiences together.
Yeah, and have new experiences together and be in agreement of like, okay, like I need to learn how to receive. Can you help me with that? Then it's not this foreign concept anymore. Or if you're a person who doesn't have community and you realize, oh man, I really need to work this through and I would really benefit from having other people in my life to help me with this or to at least pace with me and be able to talk this through. That's what collabs are all about and why we do them.
Yeah. So awesome.
All right.
So good.
We'll see you soon.
Yep. So next time we're going to be moving up to child stage of maturity. So you don't want to miss that one. We'll see you next time. Right. You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.